really interested in how did you get involved?
So on a personal level, my trajectory has been a winding one. I was a victim advocate and applied to law school thinking that I would become a prosecutor, which is, it makes me chuckle to this day that while I work with many prosecutors and I have deep respect for those particularly progressive prosecutors across the nation who are really trying to do things in a new and better way. I myself did not have a prosecutorial bone in my body. I didn't realize that until I went on a spiritual journey in which I sort of reconnected with aspects of my own historical faith and my understanding of particularly the Buddha Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, through an encounter I had with the Dalai Lama when I was 24 years old. He gave me some life-changing advice that helped me actually step onto the path of forgiveness. I forgave my father, who had sexually abused me in my childhood. And after that, sort of the heat and the rage that I had towards everyone who caused sexual harm had dissipated. And this was on the verge of entering law school. And so now all this energy I had towards becoming a prosecutor was not there. I ultimately became a defense attorney. And so I got to see the criminal legal system sort of from both sides and how it operated from the side of victim advocacy when I was doing that work, both in shelters and on rape crisis hotlines, and then also in assisting some survivors in getting ready for testimony against the people who'd abused them. And nothing really ever felt great in those contexts, as well as custody and support work I had done. And then, as a criminal defense lawyer, I saw all the shortcomings of the system on that side. I practiced criminal defense for some years. And all along, I was also deepening my understanding of Buddhist teachings and started to look at and study the Tibetan system of justice prior to Chinese occupation. I was writing back to a friend, a dear friend, Susan Marcus from law school. And this was the beginning of internet, right? And so I'm emailing her from India saying, hey, I'm learning all of this. This seems something that's right up your alley. And she said, I've been telling you about this for years. It's called restorative justice. I've been trying to get you to go to these things with me. And so when I came back to the States, I started to go to trainings and workshops with Susan. And she really opened me up to like a whole world that I had really been thirsting for my whole life. And for me on a very personal level, I think what ultimately drives me to this work is even as a child, all the systems that were on offer, I never accessed them. There weren't that many in rural Pennsylvania in the 1970s and 80s, but what was there was not of interest to me, right? I didn't want what I knew could be the potential outcomes of those processes, which were to have my father locked up or potential immigration consequences, or to be separated from my family, to be put in foster care where people did not speak my language, eat my food, practice my religion. And so it was in theory, these systems that were in theory designed to protect me were what ensured my silence about the abuse that I was enduring. And I think I've always wanted to find another way. What else could we be doing? And so for me, starting with child sexual abuse was not really a way to go in the United States. While Canada has had far more luck with that, here that wasn't the place to start. So I started working with kids who'd caused harm, knowing that maybe we might be able to start with kids who were causing sexual harm ultimately. And so I did ultimately get to move in that direction. But in the beginning, my work in restorative justice was in diversion for other kinds of harm, like burglaries and robberies and carjacks. And then we moved into teen dating violence. And then we started doing sexual assault cases, and really just got to bring the work all the way home, in a sense. Not yet to child sexual abuse with adults within families with children, but the dream lives on. Someday, hopefully, that will be something available here in the States as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Your story is one of just powerful transformations. That's what I keep hearing. And the lovely bit about sort of the teacher appears when the student is ready.
Yeah,
See, I've been telling you this all along. That's great. Excuse me, if I could, what did the Dalai Lama say?
Yeah, it's great. Great question. What did the Dalai Lama say? So I went to him, I wrote him a note. I was living in Mumbai at the time, trying to help my then boyfriend who was working with trafficked children. And I had a breakdown. I thought that I had fixed myself enough with a few months of therapy before leaving the States to come join him. And I was just really, really struggling, incapable of helping him, really in the throes of my own migraines and gastrointestinal problems and lots of manifestations of the abuse that were as yet unhealed. And I went solo traveling to sort myself out, landed in Dharamshala in the foothills of the Himalayas, where His Holiness's people are in exile. And through befriending some Tibetan folks there, eventually shared that I had been abused by my father, and they suggested I write the Dalai Lama a note. And so I wrote him a note, and it said, "Anger is killing me, but it motivates my work. How do you work on behalf of abused and oppressed people without anger as the motivating force?" And I was as yet unable to say my father sexually abused me, right? So I dropped this note off at his monastery, and I'm expecting to get, some sort of blessing cord or maybe a little note back or something. And the next week I went back, and they ushered me into the desk of his private secretary, who then offered me an hour with the Dalai Lama the following week. And so in that hour, eventually I was able to share, the depth of my suffering, and I was crying and yelling and telling him all about all the abuses that happened, gender-based violence, sexual violence, and His Holiness was an incredible listener. And so it was through actually having my story held in its totality by someone who came with zero judgment, both of me and of my father, while he was able to both hold that what my father did was absolutely wrong. He never demonized my father. And that was one of the first times I had ever had someone sit in the presence of my story, allowing me to have my reactions without putting their reaction on top of it. So in some ways, the advice he gave me was actually secondary to that experience, which was giving me a wide berth for my own feelings, including examining my non-punitive feelings towards my father. That if you asked me what I really wanted, I just wanted my family to heal. I just wanted my father to stop.